Good morning, viewers and listeners. Murielle follows here with a new episode of Date Like a French Woman. And today's episode is dedicated to feeling good and looking good. And that actually has a correlation with what we're going to talk about, because you can feel good when you're in clutter. My guest today is Kerri Richardson. She's a lifestyle designer and coach, has more than 15 years experience, and she has helped thousands of people, and I'm saying from memory, shatter their expectation and get unstuck and pursue their big adventure. So she's a big shot because she's a Hay House author with her book, What Your Clutter is Trying to Tell You. And she's going to tell you a little bit more about that. So good morning, Kerri. I'm really happy to have you here.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really happy to have you here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you ended up coaching and going into the direction of decluttering?
Yeah, it's interesting because years ago when I started coaching people, they would come to me naturally, as a traditional life coach, they would come to me with, I'm here and I want to be there. How do I get there? And so we would look at what was standing in their way, what was stopping them from taking the action they know they needed to take. And so as they would share their blocks and their obstacles, I started to help them reframe their perspective about, sometimes our emotional blocks can feel so momentous and big that I started to help them reframe their perspective by saying, imagine it was just a pile of clutter. Imagine it was just like a stack of paperwork. How would you approach it then? And it helped them to wrap their head around the idea of it's not as big and daunting as you think. And so we literally would have them work on their physical clutter, have them, clean up their environment so they can feel better about, their life and feel more confident. And so for me, it's never really been about the physical clutter, although that's an added bonus that people get to clean up their lives a bit. But it's really about let's use clutter as a catalyst for change in your life, as a transformational tool to help you take charge of your life in all different ways. And so, yes, people come to me with the typical of, I'm drowning in paperwork, or, I've got so many books I don't know what to do with. And we do talk about that. But for me as their coach, that's always just a doorway into a much deeper conversation.
So that's very interesting. So the clutter is a symbol for what's going on in their head. Do you find that symbols can be different from one person to another? Do you find common threads as far as this room represents that area in your life or that kind of problem? Is there?
Yeah. Yeah, it is interesting. It's like a really common example that I find is if someone's workspace is cluttered. So say they work from home and it's their desk at home, or even their desk at their office if they work in a traditional setting.
That I'm looking at my
oh, I can't see it, so I'm sure it's lovely. But really, it's like that speaks to, like, I would want to know from them, how confident are you in playing bigger in the world? So, if we use our clutter, as I always say, if you're afraid at all at playing bigger in the world, your clutter is a fantastic scapegoat. And so we say things like, as soon as I get that desk cleaned up, then I'll market my business. Or as soon as I clean up that desk, I'll apply for that job, let's say. Or if they're looking for love, like that's another common one. I want to look at, what do your current relationships look like? Do you have relationship clutter? Is your relationship seat already occupied with unhealthy relationships, whether they be friendship, family, or otherwise? And let's clean up that seat so you can invite in love. And so, yes, there are common things that if someone's desk is messy, there's a good chance they're afraid to play bigger in the world. If their closet is filled with stuff that they don't love to wear or is not in good condition, then it can speak to a lack of confidence. How do you want to present yourself to the world? And so, yes, there are definitely some similar messages depending on where you tend to accumulate clutter and also the type of clutter you tend to accumulate.
Wow, that's very interesting, because I just realized that for the past month, I'm taking my business to another level, and I kept saying, okay, I need to rearrange. I need to rearrange the background. I need to rearrange. And it felt like a delay tactic. So at one point I said, you know what? Doesn't really matter as long as it's,
Mm-hmm.
and go for it. That's very, very interesting. I'm going to look
Exactly.
at another.
Yeah. I mean, when we're starting to pursue something that feels a little bit scary, our tendency is to want to gain control because that can help us feel less afraid. And so that's when we'll do things like, oh, first I need to change up my background or etc. While that may be true, while it can certainly help, it's not a key point into growing your business. So it's just a little bit of a delay tactic, but that's what's so great is when you recognize that, you can go, I must be a little bit afraid to take this step. How can I take care of myself as I step out of my comfort zone?
Yes. So we talked about people who have too much clutter. Now, is there something to say about the people who are too neat? They don't want anything out of their place.
Yeah, people who are super neat, it's, again, that's a little bit more personal and individualized. And so it could be, an extreme, not an extreme, but it can be on one side of the paradigm where, maybe they deal with a little bit of obsessive compulsive disorder and they really don't like to have anything out of place. And so if they're just tucking stuff in drawers or throwing things in closets and covering it up, and so it looks like it's really neat and tidy, but in fact, if you opened up some drawers and doors, you'd find otherwise. I would want to know, like, how much of their world is about appearances, and how much are they tucking away their needs, behind closed doors, and what's the real motivation? If there's someone who really is super organized and that's just their personality, that the drawers are organized, the closets are organized, their home is tidy, they could simply just be someone who really thrives with visual clarity, and they make it a priority enough in their life to make it happen. So it all comes down to whether you have too much stuff or too little stuff. Are you happy?
Okay.
Right? Does the way you live add value to your life? And if there's a struggle or a strain there with how you tend to live, then it's worth looking at.
So I was talking with a friend yesterday on the phone, and I mentioned to her, because I do energy work, I'm very sensitive to my environment. And I was mentioning to her that I had the urge to get rid of all the books I haven't read, because they were reminding me that I don't have time to read.
Yes.
Do you run into people having reactions to certain objects and that means they need to get rid of, or do you see some of that too?
Yeah, that's a really good point that you bring up. Like, if we use the book example that you just mentioned, books are so easy to acquire these days, right? Like, we just click online and it's at our doorstep in a couple of days. And so it's easy to accumulate a lot of books. And believe me, as an author, I'm not saying get rid of all your books, but they're easy to accumulate, and they can do just what you said. They can almost taunt you from the shelves of, when are you going to read this? It's been sitting here for a while. There's actually, I think it's a Japanese expression for a pile of, accumulating reading material that you haven't read. It's like sundoku or something like that. There's a term, and it literally is about having a collection of unread books. I'm like, that's pretty common if they've come up with a term for it. But yes, thinking about the things that you have, maybe at one moment they did add value to your life. Maybe when you purchased that book, you had every intention of reading it and enjoying it or learning from it, etc. But if it's been sitting on your shelf for a while and now it's there more as like an obligation or a should, then it's clutter. So the kind of overarching thing that I say is, first of all, I define clutter as anything that gets in the way of you living the life of your dreams.
Okay.
And when it comes to the actual physical items like the books or the clothes, etc., if you don't love it, need it, or use it, it's clutter.
Yes.
And so I'll often have clients come to me and they'll say, I'm so scared to talk to you because I'm afraid you're going to make me get rid of all of my books. And I'll say, well, if you love them, And if you read them, then they're not clutter. You could have 500 books, but if you truly love them, it's not clutter. So you get to decide what is in fact clutter by using that measuring stick of, do I love this? Do I need this? Do I use this? So yes, we can have items that can start to make us feel weighed down or heavy. It's like clutter. With clutter, out of sight is never out of mind. So
No.
you can tuck it away in drawers, you can tuck it away in closets, but it's always going to be hanging on your subconscious. And as you know, because I like you, am someone who's very sensitive to energy, you can feel the weight of the stuff that you're not tending to.
Yes, totally. And so when I coach people on relationships, I have them review their relationships, and anything that weigh them down or really triggers them on a regular basis, I have them try to change the dynamics by changing their perception. And sometimes it's possible, and sometimes you have to let go of the relationship if it's really a codependency or a toxic relationship. Can you do that with clutter? Reframe what your clutter is telling you, or is it better to just get rid of?
You can absolutely reframe it. A good example is like a family heirloom, something that has been passed down, or something that, a gift that someone gave you and maybe that person has now passed away. So there can be this energy around this item that it can shift over time. So it can be something that you love and cherish because it came from that person. And then over time, it maybe you don't quite love it as much, but you feel bad because, gosh, this person gave it to you. So then guilt can come up. Then beyond that, resentment can build up if you're keeping it out of some sort of guilt or obligation. And so our relationship with our stuff can absolutely change over time. And I think that's one of the pivotal things that people need to realize is totally okay. An example I had put in my book was, I got this beautiful music box from my father many years ago. And I can remember the day that he gave it to me. He and my mother were visiting. We were poking around some shops in this cute little downtown where I live. And we got into the car after being in a shop, and he handed me a bag and he said, I saw this and I thought you might like it, kid. And I opened it up and it was this beautiful music box, and I loved it. And I had it on my desk for years, and I would play the music, and it brought me such joy. And then one day my cat knocked it off the desk and it broke into a million pieces. And it was beyond repair. There was no gluing it. There was no fixing it. And so I picked up all the pieces and I put it on my desk, and I thought, I still love this. I love the memory attached to it. So I'm going to keep it even though it's broken. As time went on, I started to get sad that it was broken and I'm looking at it all the time. And then I was mad at my cat for knocking it off. And I thought, you know what? This music box that I once loved, now when I look at it, I'm sad and angry. And what I remembered was, I can get rid of these broken pieces. It doesn't get rid of the memory. And so, I got rid of that broken music box probably 4 years ago at this point. I can still remember that day when my father gave me the music box like it was yesterday. So while I missed the item just because it really was lovely, my relationship to it changed over time, and it wasn't something that brought me joy or added value to my life anymore. It made me not feel great. And so I got rid of it. And yes, while I miss it, the memory didn't go with it. So that remains.
That's funny. My cat also broke something that was unique because it was a ceramic piece of art from my friend. And at the beginning, I was really bummed and a little bit annoyed by my cat. And then I realized that maybe it's time to let it go. Maybe it means something else because it was a couple. And maybe some new people are coming in my life. It's really weird, the relationship we have with things.
Yes.
And as far as relationship with the thing that someone gave you. So now let's bring it to relationships. I noticed that there are certain things that I know they are in my closet. I have a rag doll that my father gave me when he came back from a business trip when I was 6. Very old. But yet I can't throw it away. And what I feel is, it's not really that I can't throw it away because of the item itself, but I feel that there is something in my relationship with my father that maybe I need to address. That's really strange. I don't even know what's under the surface, but that's
Yeah.
my just gut feeling about it.
Mm-hmm.
How can you correlate your things and your relationship? Is there something that we need to pay attention to when you want to improve your relationship and you go about scrutinizing your items?
Yeah, it's, I think people underestimate the power of writing and of journaling, because I know we hear so much about, journaling, and it can feel a little cliche at this point, but I find with my clients, that is where the wisdom lies. And so your example is perfect. Your example of your relationship with this rag doll and this gut instinct that there's something more there. It's amazing if you just take pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, whatever your preference is, and ask that question: what does this doll really mean to me? And no filter, no editing, just let it flow and see what comes out. Let your inner wisdom speak. Whether it's our inner wisdom or it's our resistance, letting it speak, it's amazing what we can discover. And yes, I mean, items can play a big part in our relationships, romantic, family, friends, anything. I think about a client of mine years ago who was really eager to find love. And she was struggling because her previous relationship ended with infidelity. And she was very hurt. And so over time, as we talked about her past and her previous relationship, she talked about things in her home that reminded her of her partner at the time. And, it was everything from, she had a real aversion to technology because when she thought he was sitting on the couch working, he was talking to other women online.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden her computer became her nemesis. The couch, that was a big thing. The couch was the item that really drove her nuts because that's where he was sitting all the time when he was talking with other women when she thought he was working. And she's like, I never liked the couch anyway, but now it holds such negative energy for me that I just, I feel like I just want to, I'm so mad at the couch kind of thing. And so we talked about how those items are taking up space in her relationship house, that it's really difficult to invite someone else in. So we had a long-term plan, and now she wanted to get rid of this couch anyway, so it was helpful. And she had seen this beautiful couch in the window of a store that she loved. It was pretty expensive, but she loved it.
How symbolistic or
Yes, exactly. She saw this and she thought, I love this couch. And she intentionally put aside a certain amount every pay period until she could afford that couch. And she was so thrilled. So she swapped out the couch. We worked on her blocking beliefs around her feelings with technology, revamped the computer corner of her house. Now, this is all virtual. I'm not on site with her. She's doing it. I'm just coaching her through it. And, she would journal about her experiences with these items, even talking to the future partner that she dreamed of in her journal. And really, I would say over the course of our working together, I would say, within 2 years, she was married.
Yeah. I'm surprised. I had people get rid of mattresses because mattresses is really a big deal. It has so much energy. That's why you were sleeping with the person. I personally had an aversion for Facebook because, like her, I had somebody who was cheating online and meeting women from Facebook. For about 6 months after the relationship ended, I could not approach Facebook. I had a physical reaction even to the icon. And I had to work on that with myself because it's all associations that you have in your brain. And that's funny. You mentioned journaling. I journal a lot, and I must have a lot of resistance to that doll, because it didn't even cross my mind, and that's the tool I used. So, well, thank you. You helped me personally today.
Sure, good. It's so powerful.
What would you say about items like I had a pearl necklace from a former boyfriend, and I had to get rid of it because it was reminding me of this relationship. But selling it and keeping the money was still not an option. I don't know. It was still in my life. Whatever I would purchase with this money would still bring that energy in my life.
Sure.
What would one have to do in that case? I know what I did, but you're the expert, so I'm interested in your opinion.
Yeah. Yes, if you're someone, because I would be the same way, the energy that's connected to that necklace would be strong, that it would feel like if I sold it, because that would be my inclination. Oftentimes if people struggle to get rid of something that has value, or monetarily or otherwise, I'll say, well, sell it and recoup some of the money you spent. But when it was a gift that holds energy that is not positive for you, I would recommend, as difficult as it might be, donating it, gifting it to somebody. But again, even gifting it to someone who you care about, it would still have that same energy. So yeah, I would want to donate it. I would even, actually what I would do is I would sell it and I would donate the money to charity.
Yeah, that would be my, because that way it's something good. Then you can associate it to a good energy in the world.
Good, yeah.
Are there certain items, certain objects that always represent the same thing for everybody? For example, in relationships, I don't know, a toothbrush. I don't know what it would be, but
yeah, it's interesting. I think it very rarely represents the same thing for everyone, just because we come to every situation with our own history and our own experience. It's just like, two people can be at the same event and have two completely different experiences, and even describe the event very differently because they are seeing it through their own perspective. And so someone else may find no issue at all wearing the pearl necklace, for instance, and wearing it for the rest of their lives, or selling it and buying a piece of jewelry that they love. Like, it's very different for each person. What's the common thread is there is a message in the mess. And so for everyone, there is something that your clutter is trying to tell you, because stubborn clutter is always an indication of a non-clutter issue. It's not about the stuff. Yeah. And so if there's something you're really struggling to get rid of, even though you feel like you're pretty much done with it, exploring what that might be, what the role that item or those items might be playing in your life, because our clutter is there to help us see what's working in our lives and what's not. And so what's working for people and what's not is going to be different from person to person. There will be similarities, but every situation is going to be unique just because every person is unique.
That's intriguing. I moved to a new house, and at the beginning the energy is amazing. And after a certain time, I go into my pattern, exact same pattern of the exact same clutter at the exact same place, like on my dining room table. Mm-hmm. And then I feel the same way about that house that I felt about the other house, which is negative. But it's me. I reproduce the exact same thing. So the tools that you give in your book would be more like journaling and see what's behind it, because it's a recurring pattern.
Yeah, so there is a lesson there for you. And so oftentimes the best way to discover the lesson is to begin to sort the clutter, but to have a notebook or a journal handy so you can capture what the messages are that come up, your resistance that wants to distract you and have you do anything but that clutter clearing. Let's listen to what it has to say. I tell people that when you're going to clear clutter, oftentimes the first clutter you need to clear is your resistance. And that's really where the wisdom lies. If we think of our resistance as a creative partner instead of an enemy, we can team up with her and see like what's going on here. And so those recurring patterns that you're creating from location to location, there's a message in that clutter for you. There's some way that represents kind of keeping you small a little bit. And what is it how is it a form of protection, let's say? How might it be protecting you? What I'll have people look at is, think about what you believe your life would be like if that clutter was no longer an issue.
Yeah.
And is there anything about that vision that feels scary, that feels intimidating? Because we can, as human beings, we are naturally wired to chase pleasure or to run away from pain, right?
Yeah.
And so the chase is always fun. So we like to live in pursuit. It's exciting. It's that whole I'll start my diet on Monday thinking, right? It's that, why can't I do it today? Well, because it's not as exciting to think about starting it on Monday. We love to live in pursuit. It's exciting. But, and this is something interesting I've heard from people over the years, is what I've learned is people know how to be in pursuit of a dream. They don't know how to be the person who accomplished the dream.
It's true.
So it's very different. So we will put blocks and obstacles in our way in the form of clutter or otherwise that will keep us just a few steps away from success. Because what if we accomplish that success and then life still isn't what we wished it would be?
Yes.
Then we got to really look at some tough stuff, right?
Or what if we accomplish that success and we're exposed to being hurt?
Yes.
Or we don't have enough time for our life. No matter what the reason is, there is something negative about success.
Exactly right. Do you struggle with setting boundaries with people? And if you put yourself out there more, will you have to set more boundaries? Or yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. There's a lot more risk and responsibility that come with success. I mean, I have certainly had to learn that, when you write a book and put it out there and you expose yourself to more people, you get more people who can say some pretty mean things. And it's like, you have to be able to go, okay, separate it. Like, how can I practice loving myself through the nasty people who say mean things or, who project their own stuff onto me? If I don't let my younger self know that I will take good care of her in those situations, she's never going to want to step out bigger in the world because she's going to be scared the whole time. So, yeah.
You need to know that somebody has your back no matter what.
Exactly.
And so in your life personally, do you always look at are you very aware of how your clutter is talking to you, how your objects are talking to you? And are you on a regular basis, like putting yourself through the test to see if you have stuff to give?
Yeah, so it's interesting. What I do in my own personal life is it's more of a, at this point, because I've done the specific type work, it's more of an overriding feeling. And so I know that the message overall is, if clutter starts to accumulate for me in any way, something is out of alignment in my life. So it's what is out of alignment. And so it can literally be, if stuff starts to pile up in my home, I am someone who really needs visual clarity. It energetically makes me feel better. And so if stuff starts to pile up, I will honor that about myself and go, okay, you know what? I need to start handling some of this stuff because I'm starting to feel like I'm drowning energetically. But yes, I look at, okay, is this indicating to me that I am not practicing self-care enough? Am I not making my needs enough of a priority? Or for me, I also know, like, weight is a big form of clutter for people. That's its own version of clutter. And so I know when I start packing on the pounds that something is really out of alignment, and I need to look at, how am I using my weight as protection, as escape, as whatever it might be. So yes, I do just automatically now, when I see clutter accumulate in my life, I automatically see it as an alert to stop and go, wait a minute, what am I not paying attention to? It's a really helpful red flag that gets raised. And do I always immediately take action on it? No. I mean, I'm human, right? Sometimes I just go, you know what? I'm just going to leave that crap there, or I'm going to keep eating these sweets or whatever. But I know that ultimately it's telling me, hey kid, pay attention.
Yeah.
Something's not going, you are out of alignment right now. Let me know when you're ready to come back in line.
You talked about weight, and that's funny. I wouldn't have thought about it as clutter. I think about it as protection, or even if you are unable to measure yourself to something and you feel that you're failing, and you eat because of the stress, but there is a side also that is self-punishment because you're not able to figure out that thing and you're failing. It's very tricky. You really have to go under the surface and really go with your feelings as well.
Yes.
So in your book, and I'm going to have to buy your book, I'm going to read your book. You address that dining room table that keeps coming back.
Yes.
Do you give people like actual exercises that they need to do?
Yes. At the end
to the cat, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I know, because I have one too.
Right? She's back there scratching and I'm like, come on. Here we go. Okay. Now she just stares at me. Yes. At the end of every chapter, there are action steps to help implement the learning of that chapter. And so I made it intentionally an easy, quick read. Because the last thing people need is more clutter, right?
Yeah.
The last thing people need is more clutter. So it's, especially if you're feeling cluttered, your mind is going to feel cluttered. And so it's a quick read. And at the end of every chapter, there are exercises to put that learning into place that we covered in that chapter. And it talks about it's emotional clutter, it's physical clutter. I talk about the three main causes of clutter, which I find to be unrealistic expectations, blocking beliefs, and lack of boundaries.
Wow.
Those three main themes in life result in clutter because our outer world reflects our inner world.
So they result in clutter. So if someone was to address that in their mind without even addressing the clutter, does it work both ways? Then once they resolve that in their mind, they no longer are creating clutter in that specific space?
Yes. I mean, it's very much of a tag team, the emotional and physical clutter. So if they do resolve some of that stuff in their mind, what naturally happens is you have more energy, you'll tolerate less, you'll feel more committed to a high quality life. And so you'll be much more apt to not let clutter accumulate, much more apt to handle the clutter you already have. If you are feeling emotionally depleted in your life, you're not going to feel like you have anything left to handle the physical environment. Yes. So yes, they play off each other very well.
That's fascinating. How can people get in contact with you? Or do you have resources that they can go and check? I know your book is out there, so they can buy your book, work with it.
Yes, they can also go to I have a lot of free stuff on my website. They can go to kerririchardson.com. And that's Kerri. If they go on there, they can sign up for my weekly newsletter. When they do, they'll get a free Clutter e-workbook that will help them, identify their clutter hotspot. And I also do a weekly Facebook Live that anyone can attend to. So every Monday or Tuesday, it's been Tuesdays lately. But again, if they follow my Facebook page, facebook.com/KerriCoach, I do a weekly live broadcast where I do some live coaching with people. I talk about a particular topic. So there's a lot of free resources. My passion and my vision is to help people remove the shame that often comes with clutter. I want them to see clutter not as a bad word, but instead as a really transformative tool.
As a messenger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, shame is a big thing. For me too, in my coaching in relationships, it will hold you hostage in your stuff.
Absolutely.
It's horrible. There are two questions that I ask every guest, and because I'm big on self-love when I coach, and people don't even know where to start. It's a strange animal. They don't know how to grab it. What is your own personal definition of self-love?
That's a good question. My definition of self-love would be recognizing your needs and being confident and courageous enough to take the actions to fulfill them. So there's that, and there's the staying connected to your gut, I find, is key to do that, to know what your needs are. So listening to yourself, creating a safe space for yourself, like having your own self be your safe space, so it's with you wherever you go.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's really powerful. And are there self-love practices that you practice regularly in your life, no matter what you want to?
Sorry, the audio is a little funky.
Are there self-love practices that you have incorporated in your life and you do no matter what on a regular basis?
Yes. I do. I'm checking with my gut a lot. I keep that relationship pretty solid. If I find that it is wavering at all, I bring it back by asking myself silly questions, like checking in with my gut, what do I want for dinner? Do I want pasta or is it pizza? And I listen to my gut. So I keep that connection really strong. I don't know if you're getting the echo that I'm getting.
I am not.
Okay, good. It's not
recording echo, but
good. So I do that. Journaling is absolutely, I always use that as a default tool. And occasionally meditation.
Okay, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for this interview. That was very enlightening for me. Enlightening. I never know the real word. Franglish.
You got it.
Do you want to give one last advice before we part to people? If there is one thing they need to look at, what would it be?
Yes, with their clutter of any kind, realistic expectations are key. Don't wait for the weekend to clean out the garage. Don't wait for the afternoon to clean out the bedroom. Realistic expectations are key, and it's going to keep your resistance on board with you. Self-love comes from realistic expectations, and just taking it one step at a time and keeping that journal handy so you can capture the thoughts that come up. So realistic expectations and journal.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kerri.
You're welcome.
For our listeners and our viewers out there, go buy Kerri's book. It's going to help you in your life. I know I will, because we all have some kind of clutter somewhere. And I'm sure we're going to discover in the book that what we didn't think as clutter is in fact clutter. So I will see you next week with a new episode. May you love and realize that you are always loved. Bye.